we're talking about strategic, tactical, and operational. Yeah, I have some of the ingredients for what we can use to have a lively discussion around making risk management as valuable as possible. Also, as a little background, I used to be, and I might still be, like a real risk taker. I liked to do street skating, so jumping from like things that are a bit off, so risking it. So people that uh, know me longer say, "Are you in risk management? Isn't that a bit boring?" Uh, and it's on the contrary. I really believe that risk management really allows us to take the better risks in life, in our endeavors. So I have some of the elements that I like to talk to you about, I think it's also good to have some analogies that we can indeed work with. I have prepared some materials around cybersecurity. It's also about like data and what not to do with it. So I hope there is sufficient meat on the bones. So let's go for it. First of all, this picture illustrates the element that the Boy Scouts get, and I think a big uh, uh, thing that stands out is in the end, like, be prepared. Be prepared is, if we talk about risk and resilience, it's all about also being prepared in what way or another. So I like to talk a little bit about standards, but really more about decision making, talk about some real world examples. I will, of course, talk a little bit about tools, because we as Risk Runner, we facilitate this big challenge of better decision making with serious games, with our consulting crews, and also with software. And as Risk Runner, I will not do like a full demo, but just to give you an impression like what we are after. And of course, a Q&A, but we are, as I said, small enough to just do this in an interactive way. So I think there are like 200 definitions of risk. Of course, you will always be right or wrong, but I like this one. It's just anything that can stop or delay us from reaching a goal. Like if we don't have a goal, there's also no risk. And That's also, I think, the big difference between like hazards and risk, because risk is really, it uses a context, a target, a goal, anything or purpose, and anything that can stop or delay us from reaching a goal. It might be the negative approach to it, because everything is also about reward. So there's also there are elements around uncertainty reaching a goal. So this is also a picture, like we know that we want to go somewhere, but there is something just impacting it, impacting us reaching that goal. And Mr. Drucker says, trying to predict the future is like trying to drive down a country road at night with no lights while looking out the back window. And What I like about these statements is that, of course, it makes you think. Say, of course, that should be stupid, but we also see organizations that somehow we try to do that, and by looking at a lot of statistics and indicators. But does it really help? And It is about navigating these uncertainties that we face whilst we are towards a certain goal. So thinking about it, a lot of like analogies. So first thing that might come to mind is we got the futurists. You look into the future. You can also talk about performance. Like if we do it like this and this, we will be able to achieve our utmost best. This has like relationship with trainers. You just want to win the prize, and you want to take the risk of just being second or third or last, or but you want to be prepared. Climbing, risky, reach the top, but if you prepare well, there is a lot of benefit because we have a great view, or maybe not. It's just real foggy still on the top. This one, pioneering. We, of course, being Dutchies, we liked to explore the world, and the stock market is, I think, a big part of also like managing risk and just making sure that well, when our vessels do not return, there is limited harm, but we also have the possible benefit of getting to it. Researching, development, learn from failure, learn from success, but also the prophecy, the prophets that will warn us on the things that we have to take seriously and we have to navigate. Just a little fun fact, stock market, like why is it called stock price? You might have known this or maybe not, but of course, we being Dutch, we just like to take credit for a lot of things. So also stock, and this is dates back to the original meaning of a stock. At the moment, of course, we can. It's all digital, or we have the paperwork. But before that, you have to show up with your stock, and then you say, "Hey, but I really invested part of my money in this endeavor," and this is the original meaning of why a stock exchange is a stock exchange. It's just a wooden trolley stick. Just a fun fact. So risk management. We can talk about it for hours, which I think we shouldn't. But somehow it is a balancing act between seeing the future and influencing the future. And I think if you just look at the organizations that you are exposed to, where is the most focus on, you would say? Is this seeing the future or trying to influence it? You can just speak up, but what is it about? It's, or maybe not at all. Maybe you think, well, I don't agree.
I'll throw my hat in the ring, Dan. I think it's a subtle balance of all three. Because if I can see it, I need to influence it, or at least, brace for impact.
Yep.
Yeah, I would consider the same. Creating a certainty to base decisions on is very important, and therefore you would need to see kind of the trajectory and assess what that means in your own ecosystem or your own organization. And if you have an ability to influence, then you might be able to steer the risk away from the risk or to mitigate it, and that helps determine your future. So I think in that sense, all should apply.
Yep. Yeah. So this also comes to mind. It is more like operational. It is like the plan, do, check, or plan, do, study act. I wanted to give Mr. Deming some credits because he wanted to really talk about study and act. It is about just also seeing what's there, what is it that we take on, do we prepare, and then we also have to give Mr. Sheward credits because in the 1930s he came up with the first version of this one with a focus on continuous improvement, and he had sort of like a three-parts version. It was like produce, checked, and act. I think that was it. But I think this is also like this is the part about influencing. If we see what's coming, we can also influence it. And I use these colors because this is what we often see in organizations. If they talk about like risk management, they do a lot of like planning and doing, and then like risk assessing and checking, and to some extent also study. But it's difficult to close out also the act part and to really improve and to just as we go improve across the lines of what we learn. And yeah, there is a reason for it. And this is something that that I want to unpack, because if we talk about risk management, there is like a wide spectrum, of course, and of course I think we need to narrow it down a little bit. So on the one hand, we might have like the super intelligent, the computer science PhD, who is, for example, in a banking environment, helping to see the future and to warn and to come up with exposure analysis, sell buy recommendations, mainly around earnings. And that's the main influencing factor. But also on the other end of the spectrum, we also see organizations trying to just navigate, and then we talk about process safety or cyber, where there is no like real formal training, and we also see like some limited value to business decisions because, for example, they base their estimations on severity and likelihood, but that's sometimes it's not so super useful. And especially if we talk about all these elements that influence, for example, earnings volatility, we talk about the financial, but also like the non-financial risks. Yeah, my main question is that we have to find a middle ground. We have to, I think, we cannot afford to have all super quants, computer science PhDs in our organizations. But on the other hand, we also should sometimes make better informed decisions around risk. Yeah, that's where we are focusing on what helps to make just better decisions and navigate them. Also, we at Resilium, we are not focusing on the financial on the left column. Of course, that has an effect, but we are mostly involved with non-financial risk. And of course, there is a relationship. You cannot decouple it. So also some of the elements that we can talk about for long, but I do not want to address in depth, is like just only focusing on the active part or the passive approach, or safety versus security, or the quantitative advantage of managing risk. I will touch on it briefly. But also like delivering certainty. There is a great webinar already given by our colleague Mark. So that's just available. But I want to talk and focus a bit more on managing non-financial risk. And something that is sometimes also a bit disregarded is about there is this decision-making part. And trust and feelings. If you see this picture, you see a couple of boys taking the risk, climbing a tree because they wanted to just see how high they can go. And the precondition for high achievement is in trust, but at the same time, it's also the Achilles heel. If you trust the wrong things, it will go wrong. And this is often an overlooked element of managing these risks. And that's why we say that a good management system, in the end, it should help to really provide trust. So to help us trust that we do the right thing. We help each other to make sure that we spot the wrong branches and that we just are able to take these risks well. And it would be great if this is how our organization work well. My people trust me, I trust my people, and it's because we have a good management system that helps us. Another element around risk is about what is it? Is it speculating? Would we agree to this? Yes or no?
I think there's always uncertainty and risk, so there is a degree of speculating.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'd back that up.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Risk management is speculating. Okay. Yeah. To me, as a Dutchie, it has a connotation with gambling a little bit.
Well, it definitely does, because when you start looking at probability, that's kind of where you are. You're hedging your bets with the odds.
Right.
But I would agree with your comment before about Mark's presentation on certainty is where this starts to smooth it out. But I do think you're right. There's just a degree of speculation in everything because we just don't know.
Right. Yeah. So I would say that maybe risk management is maybe at most speculating, but then within the desired appetite of failure, because you want to or maybe that is speculation always. But it is also about do we know? Are we also still within our desired exposed level of risk? And when we talk to clients, we do quite a fair portion of our work is related to safety, and safety and speculation somehow. I don't think that's a very good way of talking about it, but still we do. So there is a balance. So I would say that maybe a little bit of a disclaimer is that this shouldn't apply to safety, because it should only ask whether a scenario or a risk is plausible. Can it ever happen? And then we should be less speculative. But for the remainder of all our endeavors, it is, I would say, about speculating whether we are still in a good way of working forwards. So I'm just touching on some of the things that we might often overlook, but I look here. This is a testimonial from one of our clients, and I just wanted to just highlight what he said. Resilium is a stable factor, and he also he describes us as it's trust. So it's just a company that he likes to work with us because it is because we are trustworthy, and this makes me, of course, very happy. And I think this is also a very important value in operational risk. It is about trust. It is whether we are able to provide this level of trust that we are navigating it into the right way. So, but then the question comes, how can someone trust when what we see and measure we do not understand? And I think if we also look back, we have sometimes just given people information or data or like a lot of like performance indicators whatsoever. Is it, on the one hand, is it trustworthy? But also like, is it actionable? Can we do something about it? And I think the main element is, okay, what is the thing that you can really measure to start with? And I think it's interesting that Ewout is in here, because you take this from the data perspective.
Yep.
But I would also say that there's also like a middle ground in there, because people that are involved and that know, they can involve, if you involve them in the right way, and just get their input and make sure that they get the means that are required to act, they will also let us know where are we strong, where are we weak, where do we need to improve. But that also needs, especially in operational management and operational risk management, a lot of trust. And all these elements are influencing the way how decisions are made. To illustrate this, if we just look at a lot of the risk standards, it is a lot of they provide us with sort of frameworks, the frameworks on how to manage these operational risks, and whether it is quality or cyber. In the end, it is all about making sure that we prepare, but also like the monitoring and measuring. Every standard to some degree, they teach us that we should do that. That's great, but why is it so hard to do? What makes it so hard? And I would say maybe that's a good question. What do we see in terms of like monitoring the effectiveness, for example, of what we do? Why is this so hard? Is this a data problem? Is this another problem? Like, for example, trust? Is this like what is putting pressure on this dynamic challenge? I opened the mic just because we're in a small setting.
Well, at least out of my experience, mostly working in extensive ecosystems, longer supply chains, is where in a more, let's say, monolithic environment where it's one corporate organization, it's already challenging enough within the organization, of course, to know what is happening where. But now if you combine it up to hundreds of parties that across the supply chain are trying to somehow collaborate with each other and at the same time assess their own risk within that chain, there, in my view at least, I haven't seen yet a lot of frameworks that have considered that extensively. It's always somewhere in a corner, like there could be something outside of your own risk scope. But in real life, what I at least see in transport and logistics is something happens, let's say, in the supply chain way before you have any influence, but that actually touches and hurts you pretty significant, but you have no control over it. How do we handle that? That would be my my point of interest.
Right. Yeah.
I really like that point, Ewout. I think that is so. So I worked in design of military aircraft. I then moved into the maintenance team and then moved in to support the operators. And everything the operator is being given is effectively somebody else's problem.
Exactly.
It's not a thing they control. My brother also worked in logistics. He's recently retired, and it's that chain effect and the ripple. And you said something that really piqued my interest, which is my risk. And when I'm in the design, I have almost no personal risk. There are maybe some sharp edges on my desk or some savage paper cuts. In maintenance, I can probably fall off an aircraft or get hurt by a sharp edge or crushing or the material or chemical or something. But it's the operator who feels the real pain. And you go, yeah, but actually that view of what my problem is and how I manage my problem has a real ripple effect in the system. So I'm kind of more of a systems engineer than anything else. And for me, it's always we have to pull up and look at the end-to-end system. And that gets really, really hard from what Dan was talking about in terms of modeling, because ISO 9001 applied to all of this, just my bit. And then we have language problems. Because what do I mean versus what do you mean?
Exactly. Then you get into the semantics of understanding across the chain. And you called it the ripple effect. The term that I prefer to use is the bullwhip effect. That basically means that it starts small. There's somebody makes a decision somewhere where you have no visibility on, that changes what you see happening. You react to that uninformed. You only see that effect. You act upon that. You multiply the effects, therefore, in the chain by a factor of 2, 4, 8, and at the end,
or 40.
Exactly, it becomes like exponential kind of an effect, and nobody knows why it's happening. Just as an example on how proliferate this is the massive container stuck for a few days has disrupted the transport. Everybody still recalls that. I forgot the name of the ship. Has disrupted the transport logistics sector for 2 years. So it's still not stabilized because one ship was stuck for 3 days with 30,000 containers on them. It's because everybody needed to queue up. So in a real fact, there were 300,000 containers waiting. Everybody who was awaiting receipt of their goods needed to control their own risk. So they ordered more stuff, take different routes, and etc. And nobody understood the individual parties doing something in the operational part of logistics. They don't know where these orders are coming from, right? They're just moving something from A to B over and over again, but somehow it multiplied in their space by factor 3. And then they started to invest like, oh, we don't have the capacity. And then it drops down to 0 again because other stuff starts stabilizing. And you see that it just kind of, it keeps on, let's say, moving back and forth, and it's still not stable after 2 years. It's ridiculous, actually. But this is where parties are actually struggling from their risk management. They don't know how to get control over this or how to assess it even.
So I'm going to ask you another question, not to go into the answer, but then if we go back to COVID times, what's the effect of the container pricing because of all the stock, well, not the stockpiling, but the piling up of containers that couldn't move during COVID? Because I think there's 2 waves there. So I think essentially, to answer Dan's question, it's the complexity of the systems we're in because we've got bigger and bigger and bigger.
Right. Yeah.
Can I just add another comment as well? I think there's also, certainly within my industry, there's a lot of silo mentality. So it's kind of it's not my problem, that's maintenance or that's operations, and it's not the bigger picture. And I think that's where the influence side of things comes in as well. Certainly from sort of the risk management side of things, you've got to move away from this silo mentality that exists and, make sure that we're covering all aspects.
Yeah.
Having moved around a bit, I can tell you that's every industry.
Yeah, that's
I
would fully agree to that.
Yeah, exactly. So we have to bust the silos and make sure that people are unable to do it. Yeah. Okay, but that is, of course, I think, a big, hairy task, so to speak. So this is, for example, we were talking about let's call it like a cyber event. I think impacting like everything for nowadays, because everything is so connected. And we learned, I think, with Heathrow or with other elements that it's now really impacting the actual physical world. And I think it's, in the end, it is very much not about paperwork, but it is, of course, about smart thinking decisions. And the difficult bits about this that we see about this monitoring and improving, focusing, priority setting, communicating. We were talking about it, but also like monitoring and improving, like what should be improved upon. And that's why I think risk is going to be very helpful. So these were 2 other examples. Sorry, UK friends, just using one of the examples, but Mark helped me with it. I think these were just 2 examples that recently happened in the UK. Marks and Spencer's were attacked. They call it a highly sophisticated cyber event. Let's see whether that is indeed highly sophisticated, or that it is indeed the ripple effect, or how did you call it, Ewout? I don't know.
The bullwhip.
Yeah. So, but you see, they warn that online sales may not resume until July. It's like big impact. Then also the co-op, they were also hacked, and it had an impact directly in stocks and supplies, recently hit by a major cyber attack. But they say that expected to recover from this weekend, and they seem to be relatively okay. You friends in the UK might have better information, but this is what the papers tell us. And there might be just a different way of how they handled the attack. For what it seems to be is that at Co-op, a difference was that someone from the IT department recognized what happened, and what he or she did was he recognized what happened, and he pulled the plug. He just simply disconnected the system, also risking, of course, just doing it for nothing, but by that just making sure that the impact was really limited. But he, of course, he had to recognize what happened. He had to make a conscious decision, take the risk and do it. So he had also the mandate to do that. Quite likely causing or preventing, a lot of further damage. So, so it seems it was also because this is rehearsed. People do recognize what's happening and make sure that they bounce back as soon as possible. But this is, I think, an example of what to do. And this comes back to my post, where I think in the end, to make proper decision making, we should use the principle of ASARP, make it as simple as reasonably practicable, because in the end it comes down to a decision or two decisions that you have to make in this very complex thing that is all happening. And that's what we are after, because I think there is a tendency, we see clients that are going into these routes. They are building data lakes and they have like a lot of data. We also, we see that clients, they say, hey, we've got these data. Can we do something with that data? And so I don't know yet. And I think it's a pitfall that we provide the opportunity to start measuring everything that matters. But what does matter? Do we still understand what to do? So we need we need a view on it to make sure that we are able to see where are we. So I don't say that this in itself is a bad thing, but I just say there are just, it in itself is also providing some risks also to organizations that are on this route. So I think this is also just a brief example. This was yesterday. You can just see that the bank boss, you can see that he doesn't sleep a lot. It keeps me awake at night. The top of the agenda, dealing with IT vulnerabilities is an enormous expense for the sector as a whole. And I think that's also something that we recognize. Last week at a process safety congress, we also see like a lot of companies struggling with it. Okay, but there's a lot that we can measure. Rachel, you talk about process safety. You've got a lot of data. There is, or potential data, but what should we measure and how to make how to do it in a way that you can indeed avoid these problems, that you can support confident planning of what to do, reduce cost, make sure that you have a crisis response as the co-op, but also build trust. So that's the element. So that's why we are focusing on with Risk Runner to make it, dim it down to the essence of scenarios and say, okay, well, and this is a bow tie diagram. You read it from left to right. And this is the latest, just a screenshot what we do. But like there are like possible elements that we can start seeing. There is a critical moment in the middle where we think, this is the, oh my goodness moment. And then the right boxes at the right-hand side, they are the actual consequences. They are the things that will cause us the real trouble. And of course, we want to prevent encryption by ransomware. That's why we have these preventive controls on the left-hand side. And also on the right-hand side, we have corrective controls. If it happens, what can we do to bounce back or make sure that it doesn't get worse? And this is, this is what our pitfall is, that this is our hammer and we are going to find everything. But to solve it. But what does this do is it provides, based on the right feedback, you are going to be able to make a decision whether we are in the desired state. If we have this data, so the red indicators might just indicate, well, it's great to have it on paper, but it's definitely not effective or it's not implemented. So it's going to provide us a view whether we should act or whether we are able to continue with a what's the word? If we can sleep well at night. And there are two ways how to get this information. It's simply by asking the accountable people. Say, hey, if this is going to happen, will it work? Yes or no? That's straightforward. The other element is that if you have these big data lakes, that you might start to see already when things are occurring, or whether your controls will work, yes or no. But in the end, it is about, okay, can we trust these controls? And this is what we are after with Resilium. This is what Risk Runner is all about. It is about just having these essential cause and effect ways of displaying potential scenarios that we think are relevant, and define, okay, well, how ready are we for our disruptions? So in the end, we want to embed risk thinking into these like regular reviews and planning, because all the management teams, they have these decisions that they want to make. We want to make the information digestible for the decision maker, so that we know, okay, where should we allocate our resources? Make it actionable with an accountable person, that this accountable person also gets what he or she needs. So if you're working at the co-op, that you think, but I have the mandate, I am trained to pull the plug when I think it's needed. But I think what's very important is also track whether it worked well and where we should improve this. Going back to the PDCA, make it very simple to say, this intervention worked well because this and this, so this we should also enforce in our standard, and make this available to people accountable and involved in risk decision making and taking. So in the element, I think this is of course like a very big introduction about, okay, there are tools, but before we just dive into like the last element of this get together, is this something that could be useful in your environments? Ewout, Rachel, Jan, if you have this information, is this something that will indeed help, or where are the limitations? Where do you see the benefits?
Yeah, Jan here. We already use a bow tie for our risk management, so and it works quite well. The problem is actually then working with big data we get also from the reporting side, and as you lined out, to analyze it in a way that it is digestible for the decision makers. That's the main challenge we have.
Okay. Right.
I can echo that comment as well. It's managing the data to get it in a usable format, particularly to the senior management. They don't want to get into the detail that the engineers that we like to do. They want to know the high level stuff, and it's how you manage that data and communicate that, and get risk as a regular discussion point. It's not just, the thing about today is it's not just process safety risk, it's all risk.
It's all risk, yeah.
Business risk or whatever. So
yeah.
I had an interesting argument. Sorry, Jan, an interesting argument with a good friend of mine, Graham, but he was wanting one bow tie to present to the senior leaders, and I suggested that if the senior leaders thought their business could be summed up in one picture, they probably didn't understand their business. And I think that's part of the problem, is the complexity of modern organizations means you can't dumb it down too much. Yes, you probably don't want the engineering detail, but it is a complex beast, and you do need lots of bits of diagrams and the ability to join the stuff together. But I totally agree with all the comments, is we have a massive amount of data. And what I love about the bow tie is it's a route to simplification, but it is not a simple answer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, common mistake, exactly. If something is considered common, that doesn't make it simple, right? If I take a subscription for my phone, instead of building a telecom network, that's very simple. right? It's a commodity, but it doesn't make a telecom network simple. But people want to make that connotation in their head, and it's a separated topic. For me, the data point, of course, is my area of interest. Is as we are generating more and more data every single day, right? We're doubling basically on data on a weekly basis, nearly, as we generate throughout the time that we started to digitize, and that's only accelerating. Me thinking more from an ecosystem supply chain perspective is a lot of this data is not directly accessible by me, and trying to chuck everything into a data lake is a very expensive way of duplicating information, right? So I'm also very much involved in data space developments, which is part of the EU policy around digital decades and all the data related policies that's coming in, that data should remain at source and should become accessible from there, because then it can be reused for many purposes, including viewing your risk. Is there so two questions maybe? One is how is data connected to Risk Runner today, just from a solution perspective?
Yeah.
And secondly, and the more interesting question maybe on the longer term is what is the vision that you guys have on knowing that more and more data might hamper the visibility ultimately to the board or to the management that needs to assess risk? How do you keep that in a level of control?
Right. Yeah. That's, I think, a very valid question, and so the main reason why we started developing Risk Runner was that we did like a lot of these great analysis work and say, okay, well, this is how we can control it, but how do we verify whether it will work? That's the thing. So what we do with I'm going to skip part of it because so what we did is we just wanted to make it like very simple to do. That's one thing. And to do what is to first have these analyses available. But the third dot, it is about systematic feedback collection. It's just a way about, okay, you are accountable for this risk, or you have an involvement, and you just have like a frequent review. And it's as straightforward as possible. Just ask whether it will work or whether you have some doubt and you need some more like resources to act. And whether that is money, training, competence, mandate, whatever, you want to know it on your critical controls. That's why we call it critical control management. There is like systematic action tracking so that we can also address what needs addressing. But the important part is that it needs something that needs some rigor, because we need to be able to verify whether these controls will work when it's needed. So we're dimming it down to the essence of these risk scenarios. And for now, we really focus on just asking the accountable people or the responsible persons to say, okay, well, will it work? Do you have like good information? This already bridges a gap that in a lot of organizations exists. That's what we see. We also see that there are organizations, but we've got this data. We already know it somewhere in our organization. That's why it's like a big review engine, and Risk Runner is very open. It's very open to connect to data sources. This is, for example, something that we did at Amsterdam Airport. They are already connecting some data on the performance of a control. So once you know that, you can simply disclose it and say, hey, this control will quite likely work or not. So that's the current way of approaching this. Alistair.
So I think just to pick up on that point, and it's the point that Rachel made earlier, is a lot of the software is in itself a silo, because a lot of it doesn't like you to do anything other than their way. Yeah. So as Dan said, we've made it to be quite agnostic, quite open. So there's an open API so that you can bring things in. I think AOUT doesn't kind of specifically answer the quality about we have this massive data lake and that's now a big problem. But that's part of my pet peeve is data quality. That's my issue with AI is I just want to know where it came from. Where was it? What is it? What's the provenance of this information? I really like data that comes from within your organization. I think that's got some, again, you have quality issues, but you can start to pull on these strands a lot more comfortably because you know the source better. So the tool is about saying, yeah, we have lots of information. Let's make it easy to start to point to things rather than duplicate and reproduce. So every silo is trying to produce their version of that data. And then you get even internally the who has the best information. Well, how can yours be better than the others if it all came from the same source?
Yep. Okay, that's something we might explore in some breakout at some point, because that's a thing that we are very much focused on. I talked to Dan on that once or twice lightly, and we're willing to explore basically on that provenance part and how to overcome that.
Yeah, exactly. And I think what we reach it just from, okay, well, we just look at the scenarios that we can foresee, and of course there is always a little element that we cannot really foresee. But I think there is not a lot that that if you just assess it well, that you think, oh, this really took us by complete surprise. If we look back, it's often sort of like a cascading of failing controls, and so that's why we start with just asking the relevant people in a very straightforward way whether it will work and whether we should improve something, and also safeguarding the best practice as a starting point, because this is something that also we see that we reinvent like square wheels when we start working with risk, and we should just make it simple, and that's what we are really tackling from that perspective. And I think once we have that picture, then we can also say, hey, but these are the controls, this is what we need to influence, what data do we have to back it up, and that's our approach. I think for
Can I just add another bit, Dan? Because I think it's relevant to this. Is I think of the questions that we ask, there is the first one is, are you doing what you said you were doing? And then one of the key bits for me that I push a lot in barrier thinking is the barrier, if you describe it in terms of the effect you want to achieve, that's much stronger than describing systems and functions and stuff like that. What's the effect? So am I doing the stuff that I said I was doing to achieve the effect? And then the second wave is that effect having the desired output that we want? And that then starts to speak to the data quality, because on aircraft systems that I worked on, we ended up with looking at a lot of things about indication that was displayed to the aircrew. And you started to understand, oh, hang on, that's not a true fact. That's an inferred function, because we can't test the actual pressure and tell you. What we're doing is saying there is airflow, there is movement in that pipe, therefore there must be pressure, and we infer that it is good. And you start to go, oh, hang on, because I can see this effect doesn't necessarily tell me it's doing what I need it to do, and so on. So you then can start to address the quality or the qualities of the data that you have to understand. And I think that's quite interesting in your sort of bullwhip bit, is you go back and you go, actually, all I know is that point and I need to get back to here. So how can I move my data point back to the source?
Yes.
So the first wave is to the edge of your truth. And then you have to start asking your suppliers and other businesses better questions.
Yeah. Cautious of time. Of course, we can explore this. It's also like an introduction why we built RiskRunner. That is the main element. We see the first clients providing quite good feedback that it is helping, and it is useful, and it is user friendly. And of course, we do not have everything yet, but that's the journey where we're on. And of course, we also make a little bit use of AI, but we want to first make sure that we are able to, if we have then this picture of risk with exposure, that we can enable to make a decision. That's the next element. But also that if we have success or failure, that we can also make sure that this learning is being shared across, for example, our daughter companies or our organizations in the field, so that we are just making it more easy to say, okay, this is a best practice of managing these risks and verifying whether it will work, yes or no. And then indeed, the last bullet, make it easier to connect to existing data. It's API forward because it's just part of the future. And this is why we are really working hard on this. Final, because I'm also conscious for time, takeaway, risk, it's everybody's responsibility. So we should also then make it something that we work on together. Simple tools can manage complex risks. I think that's just a very important element. Reviewing and improving can only be done when it is sharp or as SERP. It's as understandable, as reasonably practicable. And maybe for you, if you look for some good reads also around risk, these are valuable resources. This is the MITRE attack is just a very big overview of elements that are impacting cyber related or security related causes. CrowdStrike Global Threat Report, I think it's just good to see what's happening on this world. Looking back to very old elements, the intelligent investor, what to focus on if you want to ride these waves. And there are also, of course, differences in how our organizations are built, if we are in a very stable situation or whether we are starting up, disrupting, or researching. There are also other games, other rules to playing the risk game. So I hope you picked out one or two elements that were worth your time. I look forward to engaging with you further in the close future. And thank you for your time.
You're welcome. Thanks for
Thank you very much.
organizing the session.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Thank
Cheers
you.
all.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye now.
Bye.